Family and fellow soldiers, I'm the Professor, and this is the Moment of Truth. Well, Donald Trump's been making headlines again for all the wrong reasons, or perhaps the right reasons. First of all, let's go ahead and get the most obvious point out of the way. What is Trump attempting to do with this latest little stunt of outrage? Well, first of all, with the Epstein files' latest tranche having been made public, and people actually seeing who's who and what's what, Donald Trump would love to see the headlines change. He'd love to change the subject even if he has to force it, and that's what he does best. With the disclosure of more of the Epstein files, what's happening is people are actually seeing who the hell has been hobnobbing with the most degenerate elements, not just in American society, but around the world. They're pulling back the curtain and getting a real look at who's been dishing the dirt. To wit, Pizzagate may not have been real, but it is real that there's been a lot of rich and powerful people who have been engaged in exactly that kind of activity, just like the public thought. And the public anger about all this isn't going away, but it's not finding an outlet either. The people are angry, but there's nowhere for them to vent. They're not actually seeing that anger translate into action against any of these reprobates. And the sad truth is, it's not going to, certainly not easily. Because, of course, the people who are responsible for prosecuting the criminals were chosen by the criminals. If there's supposed to be some sort of war on crime, well, how do you make sure that you guarantee yourself to win the war? By funding both sides. Trump didn't expect his own base to keep pushing for the Epstein files to be released. He thought that if he kept throwing these guys red meat, their bellies would be full, and at some point they would move on to something else. The real threat, however, is not just to have pedophiles and degenerates exposed. It's also the destruction of the legitimacy that the system had by delegitimizing its administrators. That's the real threat here. Wouldn't it be the greatest of ironies if the biggest liar in America just so happened to be telling the truth when he says, "I didn't really have any dealings with that guy like that"? Yeah, but everybody who Trump would depend on, people in his orbit, the people that he made promises to, they all were mobbed up with Epstein. Maybe Trump's hands aren't dirty, but everybody else's certainly are. They all pretended to be ideological opponents, but in reality, it was just political theater. And why were these people who portrayed themselves as being so entrenched and intractable in their own beliefs also so happy and willing to hobnob with a man that they all knew ran a pedophile ring? It's because their mutual depravity was the only thing that mattered. This is the true and only ideology of white supremacy. Power and the ability to abuse it with impunity. That's it. That's the only thing that these people actually believe in. And what makes somebody valuable to these kind of individuals is whether or not they're willing to go all out to protect them. That's the devil's bargain that Barack Obama made. When Barack Obama was running for president back in 2008, this country was on the verge of a revolution because of the economic meltdown. And what was it that the first biracial president's job actually was? To dissipate all of that revolutionary energy. Think about it. Barack Obama got more money from these big donors than George W. Bush got in either of his elections. Think about that. W gave the rich all of these tax breaks, tax cuts, more than any president in history. He was hell-bound and determined that he was going to slant the entire national economy strictly in the favor of the rich. He did more for them than any president ever had, and yet those same people gave more money to Barack Obama when he was running, the guy from the opposite party. What does that tell you? What on earth did Barack Obama promise these men that could have possibly been more valuable than what W had already done? And then you look at the fact that none of them went to prison. You look at the fact that these guys got to have the National Treasury bootstrap all of their incompetence. And they got to keep all of their bonuses. They didn't have to lose anything. In fact, they gained from it. Courtesy of the nation's first biracial president. They used America's cardinal sin of anti-FBA racism as a smokescreen to be able to put this biracial puppet into the White House. And when he got in there, he did exactly as he was told. White supremacy has always used race as a glittering distraction in order to get people to look the other way so that it can carry out its dirt. And what Donald Trump has done with this latest racial outrage is another example of that. I'm not saying that Donald Trump didn't mean to make this racist remark. Obviously, this is the orange man being his typical racist self. But what I am saying is, he understood exactly what the impact of it would be. He's using it as a distraction, clearly from the Epstein files. And if he's willing to put this self-inflicted wound upon himself, one has to wonder, what is it that he's really trying to prevent people from looking at? What is it that he really doesn't want the public to focus on and to see? Or rather, who is it that he's trying to protect? By the way, just for the record, I find it amusing that the white right likes to do their little slick shots of the black community and talking about how they love this kind of memes and, oh, we love this stuff because this is telling the truth about the black community, etc., etc. These clowns need to figure out that comparing any black person to a primate is ridiculous for a white supremacist to do it. And it shows that they don't care about the facts, only about whether it fits their perverted ideology. As long as you give these clowns their temporary sugar rush of anti-black hysteria and hatred, they're good for the rest of the hour. I mean, this is the reason why meth is so popular. It's the closest thing to anti-black racism that they can have in a chemical form. But if these white supremacists want to see who truly resembles a primate, all they have to do is look in the mirror. It was white scientists who established that black people don't have Neanderthal DNA, but the white supremacists do. And that's why we prefer the sun. I've long felt that we should have a month dedicated to our history, and like every black person, I recognize that when white people chose February as so-called Black History Month, they did it as a backhanded compliment. It was them choosing the shortest and coldest month of the year. It was an open insult, and that's just normal for the dominant society. If we are to have a month set aside to recognize our history, contributions, and accomplishments, then it ought to be a month like, say, March or April. Why? Because March is the actual start of the new year. It's the start of spring. Now, April would probably be preferable by many of you because it's a warmer month, but regardless, we can all agree that February is the wrong month for Black history for a variety of reasons. But why is it that the white supremacists in particular, they love that kind of thing? Hell, when you look at it, why is it that the coldest months of the year are sacred to these guys? It's because the white supremacist is not natural. Jeffrey Epstein was an excellent example of that fact. But why do these white supremacists, they're heathens, they're cultists, love to go against nature? They don't follow the natural human rhythms of the earth. They instead rebel against them. Instead of doing what humans have done and get up at dawn, they instead demand that the day begin in the middle of the night. And the same with the yearly calendar. Why for the European did the year begin in the middle of the dead winter? Shouldn't the new year begin when the earth is coming back to life again in the spring? It used to in every culture around the world, until white supremacy forced the planet to dance to its tune and to become part of the pale hand of death's suicide cult. See, the reason the white supremacists forced midnight onto us as the beginning of the day and forced winter onto us as the beginning of the year is because the druids and the other heathens would go out in the middle of the night into the woods for their little occult worshipping. They knew what they were doing was wrong and weird, so they went out in the middle of the night to do it. Sunlight is the best disinfectant, but what happens when the filth only come out at night? The reason that this comes naturally to the white supremacists like Jeffrey Epstein and Donald Trump is because of the Neanderthal genes. Humans go to sleep at night. Animals, on the other hand, get up to go hunt at night. That's their favorite time to do it. It's a time for them to look for soft targets to attack, to carry out ambushes, to find ways to crawl into places that they normally wouldn't be able to get into. Rodents and vermin typically sneak into people's homes during the night. You see, for them, sundown is the beginning of their day, and daybreak is the time that they want to avoid. There's a reason why the dominant society is so obsessed with vampires and romanticizes them. They look at vampires and see themselves. So for these white supremacists out there, no matter how you choose to slice it, whether it be in physical appearance or inward nature, black people have nothing in common with apes, orangutans, or any other sorts of primates. But can the orange man say the same? Of course not. Now, this latest stunt by Donald Trump has gotten a lot of attention by the left corner of the white media, and the outrage that many of them have been showing is genuine, just not for the reasons they say. Sure, calling out Trump's latest act of racism is an easy layup because it's true, but it's not a surprise. What's missing from the left's outrage is what they're going to do about it. Notice how not one of the talking heads or any of these political bloviators have said a word about that? What's the reaction to this going to be? Their entire response is, well, the reaction is, you need to turn out to vote. This is why we can't have him in the White House. You need to vote. Fine, but Donald Trump's not up for re-election. The reality happens to be, even if the orange man were to resign from office tomorrow, there would be J.D. Vance or some other scumbag who's just as bad as him, if not worse. So the only thing the white left is recommending is playing a game of musical chairs with these racists. That's not a sensible conversation at all, because it's not a conversation, it's a distraction. When it comes time to talk about white people getting killed in the course of protecting illegal aliens, or even when it's illegal aliens themselves who are getting rounded up, when it comes time to talk about any other group's issues other than foundational black Americans, Suddenly, the same white left that didn't have any ideas, now they're just brimming with policy proposals. Now they don't just do half a thought, they actually follow through on it. They tell you what a problem is, and then they say, now here's what needs to be done. Suddenly, they're putting forward ideas about things they want to do. They're not just tisk-tisking and saying, oh, isn't that a shame? A few Asians got into fights back in 2020. Democrats passed an anti-Asian hate crime law. A few Asian businesses lost some of their foot traffic during the pandemic. They hurried to pass laws to make it possible for them to get economic help. When the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade, Democrats responded by going to the states and passing statewide referendums. When Clarence Thomas merely hinted that the Supreme Court should revisit its gay marriage ruling, they pushed a gay marriage law through Congress, and they did it during an election year. Illegals are getting rounded up. They push for a temporary protection program. White people get killed protecting illegals. They're demanding that ICE be abolished and that the Trump administration has to fire or remove or even prosecute anyone who was involved. Kristi Noem and other spokespeople for Trump said that the white folks who got killed in Minneapolis were terrorists. You got the left saying these guys all have to be forced to resign, probably should be prosecuted. But what they're not doing is they're not merely saying, oh, well, Trump and his people, they were just wrong for that. Anytime you see these people saying that they care about some act of anti-black racism, but you don't see them pushing policy to punish it and to punish those responsible, then they're just running game on you. Donald Trump's racism is disgusting, but it's not new, and neither is the Democrats' inaction to it either. Trump's not the only racist looking for a distraction that he can use as a way out of his immediate political problem. The Democrats are also doing the same. They know that their so-called much ballyhooed blue wave for November is starting to look more like a blue ripple. That being the case, they need to augment those numbers. They need to boost the numbers for potential voter turnout. And who the hell else can they go to? Well, it turns out that all of these other groups that they thought were going to replace the black vote, all of these other constituencies that they've been desperately trying to cultivate, well, they're just not getting on board. Not to the game-changing proportions that Democrats need. So as usual, they've been forced to go back to the old standby, to the true swing vote, the only swing vote. That FBA constituency. That's who they've been forced to have to go back to, the base of the Democratic Party. But as usual, they're determined to get that vote without doing or even promising anything to us. They want us to look at disrespect towards Barack Obama as being a personal affront against us. Well, they chose the wrong foil for that ploy. It's like I've been saying for years, these people keep trying to push one of two buttons in the black political psyche, the fear button or the anger button. When black people stayed home in 2016, that was because of anger. When black people turned out to vote in 2020, that was because of fear. Because after all, Donald Trump was too dangerous to be allowed to have a second term. We can be disgusted by Trump's racism, but we're not surprised. And if these people who are so outraged aren't talking about what they intend to see done, not just to Trump, but also to the people who promote this kind of anti-black racism, then they're liars when they claim that they're outraged. All it took was for people to merely criticize Israel committing a genocide, and you got Democrats and Republicans who began pushing laws and policies to punish campus protesters. They forced the sale of TikTok because it was the only social media platform that allowed people to post the gory videos of what the IDF and the Israeli government were doing against the Palestinians. That's what that forced sale was truly about. And sure, Trump's taken the lead on targeting foreign student activists for deportation, but he's just continuing the policies that Biden started. Biden was the one who set the table for all of that. And now we got talk about an anti-Semitism czar, which reminds me of Letitia James setting up a hotline and a task force when the Stop Asian Hate hashtag was trending. When any other group is saying that somebody's done something that offends them, when it comes to these people on the white left, especially the Democrats, they respond with actions. They respond with policies. They don't respond with excuses and lies and claim, oh, well, we tried, but we just couldn't get it done. Look what's gone on with Trump going after TPS. You got federal judges passing all kinds of orders saying, oh, you can't do that. In fact, you can't do anything. Yeah, these courts and these judges who never seem able to enforce the law on behalf of foundational black Americans, who never saw a law targeting us that they thought was unconstitutional, who never have a problem rubber stamping all of the asinine strategies of people like Ed Blum and other trash. These same judges, as soon as you got any other group whose rights are being threatened, or in the case of illegal aliens whose unconstitutional privileges are being threatened, all of a sudden these guys can't wait to say, oh, you can't do that. Now all of a sudden these guys do this across the board. What does that tell you? That tells you that this is an organized offense. These are not accidents. There is a clear, unwritten, but fiercely enforced policy that where foundational black Americans are concerned, we are to be completely and thoroughly ignored, if not just attacked outright. If you're not attacking us, then at the very least you're supposed to ignore us. And we know this blatant policy of singling us out to be attacked is real because of how consistently it happens, how consistently they do it, with a consistency that we never see at any other time, towards any other constituency, or on any other issue. That's how you know anti-black racism is the law of the land. So if you're going to call yourself pointing to Donald Trump's racism as proof that black people need to get up and vote for the Democrats, then I'd love to know what it is that's going to be done the next time that Joe Biden says some stupidity like, if you don't know who to vote for, you ain't black, etc. To say nothing of the '94 crime bill and other legislative atrocities. If we're going to be going after Donald Trump on the basis that he's a bigot and a racist targeting black people, then there's going to be a hell of a lot of other people who need to be punished right alongside him. And maybe that's the reason why you got all these people on the white left who are being very careful with the wording that they use. Because they understand that there's really not much you can say about the orange man that wouldn't apply also to the rest of the white left too. Good day, and be one. I'd like to take a moment to mention some of our contributors: Gavin Andrade, Rob Mack, Frederica Moore, Alyssa Boutte, and Roxanne Allen. Salute to them and thank you to everyone for listening, liking, and sharing this message. Black empowerment only exists because of you.